We have a wonderful and engaging program, and I think you'll find it interesting. Many of you already know the wonderful work that legal aid attorneys and volunteers do every day. Our attorneys are dauntless in their efforts as they give legal voice to those who otherwise wouldn't be given the time of day. I am so proud to be serving as president of the Board of Directors of Legal Aid this year. You'll meet a few more of our board members later in the program, but at this point, I would like all board members of Legal Aid, both past and present, to please stand and be recognized. For our current board members, I am proud to serve with you. For our past board members, it is an honor to stand shoulder to shoulder with you as we shepherd this wonderful organization into its 110th year of service to the community. We have a legacy at Legal Aid of providing a legal voice to those who cannot afford an attorney, especially when their health, shelter, safety, and economic security are at risk. And if that legal voice is to be expanded to the greatest number possible, you, our volunteers, supporters, and friends, are indispensable to our success. You will hear the sentiment of appreciation a lot today. We cannot say thank you enough. The message we hope to convey to you today during this luncheon is that if each of us expects justice in our lives, then we too must be willing to participate to ensure that justice is available to all. We are all in this together. This luncheon is as much a thank you and a rededication to our common goal, justice for all, as it is an annual report. In fact, I have 3 words for you: gap, scales, and fairness. The very reason that legal aid exists is the persistent gap between the justice that is available to those with the financial resources to afford an attorney and the poor, the vulnerable, the helpless, who are undefended, who go unrecognized. We are using our attorney skills to close that gap and balance the scales of justice. The balancing of the scales should be based on the weight of the legal authority presented to Lady Justice, not the weight of the legal tender behind each party. Finally, we seek fairness in jobs, in education, in housing, in immigration, and in our very justice system. Everyone should be treated fairly. It's only right. So I will turn over the podium to our wonderful Executive Director, Colleen Cotter, who will guide us through a review of our year past with the help of a few special friends. With that, thank you for being with us today. Colleen?
Good afternoon. Thank you, Rick. And let me add my welcome. We are so delighted you could all be with us this afternoon. And on behalf of all of the staff and myself, I would like to extend a special welcome to Secretary Perez. We are so honored you could be here with us today. We all share a passion for justice. This is the only time all year that we all, the board and staff of Legal Aid, our wonderful volunteers, our partners in social services and healthcare, public and private agencies, civic leaders, and our partners in the justice system can all gather together to celebrate our successes and our shared passion. Your presence says a lot and means a lot. Before we hear from Secretary Perez, I'd like to do a few things. Some will be familiar to those of you who have joined us before, and a few are new. We'll begin with some awards for some extraordinary staff members. We've also this year added awards for extraordinary volunteers. We'll recognize 3 board members who are concluding their terms with Legal Aid. And finally, we'll give you our report for our work of the last year. First, the awards. The commitment, talent, and passion for justice shared by these very special individuals is at the heart of all that we achieve. The Claude E. Clark Award recognizes staff members who exhibit special passion for our work and inexhaustible dedication to legal aid's clients. You can read more about the Claude E. Clark Award recipients on page 7 of your program. I am so pleased to congratulate the recipients of the 2014 Claude E. Clark Award, Julie Cortez and Mary Beth McConville. Please stand. Such well-deserved recognition of your incredible work. We'd also like to take a moment to recognize 3 special members of our board of directors whose terms end this year with legal aid. Ann Bergen, a former board president, a fitting leadership role for a former staff attorney, who took pro bono leadership to a whole new level. Adrian Thompson, also former board president and former staff attorney, who led the organization through a challenging time. And Chris Meyer, who helped build our bankruptcy bypass program and provided such solid financial guidance. You have helped guide us wisely and safely through the last few years. Because of your leadership, Legal Aid is a stronger organization. Thank you. Please stand so we can recognize you. Our final group to call out, some exceptional volunteer attorneys. These volunteers gave of their time and their expertise well above the call from us. Our 2014 Pro Bono Recognition Awards are also highlighted on page 7 of your program book. Award winners, please stand when I call your name. Jessica Baclini, Carolyn Brown, Joseph Dunson, Robert Glazier, Paula Goodwin, Jennifer Himline, Jennifer Novak, William Perry, Peter Chenier, Curtis Tuggle, Christopher Williams, Nadia Zaim, and the Lake County Bar Association Family Law Section, whose co-chairs are Anna Perez and Daria Clammer. Our award winners highlight that we do not do this work alone. By together securing justice and enforcing our clients' rights, we change the calculus of our clients' lives to lessen the weight of poverty. Did you know that 45% of people who spend half of their childhood in poverty continue to live in poverty at age 35? Compare that to those who spend less than half of their childhood in poverty, just 8% are poor at age 35. 86% of children living in poverty are unable to read proficiently by grade 3. In contrast, children in homes above the poverty line achieve higher SAT scores, are less likely to test drugs, or become involved in a crime. And finally, students who come from low-income families are 7 times more likely to drop out of school. Compare that to how health outcomes improve with wealth. The life expectancy for those above the poverty line is 5 to 10 years longer than for those who live in poverty. We hope this piece evokes for you both the despair and powerlessness our clients can face, and how liberated and exhilarated our clients feel when those nightmares go away because of the presence, smarts, and caring of a legal aid lawyer. The power of the law changes lives. The legal solution is the key to opening doors to a better life, to keeping your home, to securing a protective order to escape an abusive relationship, or getting your child the extra supports they deserve in school. Our staff lawyers and volunteer attorneys help our clients find their voice and change the trajectory of their lives upward rather than depressingly, perpetually downward. As you saw in the video, last year, legal aid helped 22,144 people through almost 9,000 cases. 48%, almost half, of the people we helped were children. Last year, we prevented 99% of the evictions our clients faced. We stopped over 3/4 of the foreclosures filed against them. We removed barriers to education in 85% of our cases, and we secured the personal safety from abuse and other assaults for 98% of our clients. Maybe the Browns can put up numbers like that this year. And here's another number, $25 million. That's the amount of money by which we increased our clients' assets and income and decreased their debt just last year. As you can see, our work is not theoretical. We don't do this work for the principle of it, although our work is very principled. We want to take action so that our clients are less poor. Never having enough money is our clients' biggest overriding adversity. We use the power of the law to change that, to strengthen our clients' economic security. And our successes rest as much on the strong bonds with all of you, often from widely separated but deeply interconnected places from all across the region. And now we'd like to put some faces and stories behind those numbers. As a major law firm for people with low income, we have a complex practice at the intersection of multiple areas of the law. We have 4 goals outlined in our strategic plan. First, improve safety and health. Second, promote education and economic security. Third, secure decent, affordable housing. And fourth, ensure the justice system and government entities are accessible and accountable. But clients often do not arrive with single issues, and often solving one issue requires solving 2 or 3 others along the way. By way of illustration, let me introduce Lillian Medina and her legal aid attorney, Megan Sprecher. Ms. Medina migrated from Honduras, which is as difficult and dangerous a journey as you can imagine. Once here, though, life did not get immediately easier. Ms. Medina's American boyfriend was abusive, and her 4-year-old son, Juwan, had yet to begin speaking. Megan, tell us more.
Thank you, Colleen. Ms. Medina and I first met in February of 2008 when she was referred to legal aid by Metro Health's McCafferty Clinic and her advocate at the Domestic Violence Center. Ms. Medina and I had several problems to solve, the most pressing of which was keeping her safe from her ex-boyfriend. To keep her safe, Ms. Medina filed a police report so the authorities could investigate and prosecute him. To encourage immigrants who don't have green cards to report serious crimes like domestic violence, the government created a special visa called a U visa, which is for people who help with the investigation or the prosecution of a serious crime. It can be really scary to report a crime, especially one that involves an ex-boyfriend, especially when you don't have a green card, and especially when you don't speak English, which Ms. Medina did not at the time. But she was brave enough to make the police report, she helped the detectives, and she even testified in court, which, as you can imagine, is also a really scary experience. Her ex-boyfriend went to jail, which is unusual for a first-time domestic violence conviction. What that means is that Ms. Medina was a really strong witness. I was able to help Ms. Medina get her U visa so she could remain in the United States. She recently got her green card, so life in America with her son Juan can now really begin. I'm happy to report that Ms. Medina just finished her first year as a janitor at Juan's school, where he's happy, talking, and doing very well. Ms. Medina and I have known each other for more than 5 years now. We've done a lot together. She's moving on from the complex world of bureaucracies, of dealing with the police, with the school, and immigration. She's safe from her abuser, and she's established a secure home for her son, Juan.
Hi, my name is Lilian Medina, and it's my son, Juan Hall. And only I say thank you so much, Legal Aid. Really, really, thank you so much. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Medina. Thank you, Megan. On the surface, this was a domestic violence matter, but as you can tell, it was so much more. This is what we do at Legal Aid. We use the power of the law to change lives. Our second goal is to promote education and economic security. As I suggested, the heart of getting our clients economic security is getting them more money. More money means a better, more stable, healthier life. Keep in mind, most of our clients work, but as you saw in the video, they work at jobs that don't pay very much. Increasing economic security means removing barriers to employment and to a meaningful education. To highlight this, I'd like you to meet Stacy Canada and her legal aid attorney, Deborah Dahlman. Ms. Canada is a single mother. At the time she came to Legal Aid, her son Timmy was 10, a very, very smart kid, a math whiz. He was also the very unhappy victim of bullying at a school in Lorain County. Ms. Canada?
Thank you, Colleen. Good afternoon. My particular story of the help that Legal Aid provides began a year ago when Timmy was in 5th grade. Academically, Timmy was succeeding wonderfully. In fact, he was a bit of a math whiz. But the other boys bullied him. He would come home with bruises. He had no friends at all. He was not at all sociable. Kids made fun of him. He would spend his time in the classroom obsessively taking apart pens, pencils, and erasers. He stuffed his pockets full of toys and cars and would take them to school. His classmates teased him for his odd behaviors. I knew something was wrong, but autism was the furthest thing from my mind. I tried and tried to get the school to evaluate Timmy, but because he was doing well academically, they said everything was fine. Even in 1st grade, loud noises would bother him. Once a fire alarm sounded, and he responded by biting another child. At recess and at the end of the day, the crowds of children overwhelmed him. After the kids picked on him in the boys' restroom, the school's answer was to make him use the office restroom. Well, you can imagine how helpful that was with 10-year-old boys. I eventually had him evaluated at a mental health center in Lorain County. He was diagnosed with autism, but still the school pushed him aside and said everything was fine. That's when I went to Legal Aid and I met my attorney, Deb Dahlman.
What really bothered me about Ms. Canada's case then, and still does even after I do more education cases, is that Timmy's teachers for 4 years watched his behaviors and watched him struggle and still ignored him when his behavior screamed autism. That really angered me when Ms. Canada first came to see me, and I really felt for her. In the end, Timmy's condition was obvious. He had autism, and that was clear, and the answer to his education was obvious and easy. And it shouldn't have been this way, but it was. For the representation of an attorney was necessary in Ms. Canada's case because the school district was refusing to do anything that she asked for. Legal Aid's representation of Ms. Canada made all the difference. When she came to us, All Miss Canada was asking is that the school district evaluate her son to determine whether he was eligible for special education services because of his autism. The law clearly says that a child with a disability is entitled to a free and appropriate public education. That education has to be tailored to fit that child's special needs. We were able to convince the school district to evaluate Timmy. They developed an individualized education plan which addresses some of Timmy's needs for social skill instruction. So in the end, the district didn't fight like they had fought Miss Canada. They didn't push back. So we got there. But for Miss Canada, it was really hell getting there.
Timmy really is so much happier now. He is learning how to better deal with kids teasing him. He is now in advanced math. You should see him, the way he carries around his math textbook. Plus, for the first time ever, he has a friend in school. I'm extremely grateful to Deb and to Legal Aid. They changed Timmy's future, and they changed his life. Each time I pleaded with the principal or called the superintendent, it felt like we had no rights, like no one was listening. But now I truly know Timmy has rights, I have a voice, and because of Legal Voice, my voice was heard. Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy. Thank you, Deb. We help our clients' children like Timmy gain access to the education that they all deserve, to help them lay the foundation for a future of economic security. Often what our clients really need is a lawyer by their side to validate their rights. Legal Aid's third goal is to secure decent, affordable housing. Now we'd like you to hear from one of our 1,500 volunteer attorneys, Ellen Kramer of Cohen, Rosenthal, and Kramer, where she's a founding partner. Ellen does a lot of pro bono work for us. Ellen was the lead volunteer attorney on a foreclosure case this past year. Foreclosures are one of the constants in our practice, understandably so, and more so since the Great Recession. But I'll let Ellen tell the story of Winnie Johnson's foreclosure. Ellen?
Thank you, Colleen. Winnie Johnson and her home in Euclid represents how the routine mortgage path can be strewn with unforeseen landmines, even in the most unexceptional circumstances. Winnie had lived in her house in Euclid for about 14 years, but fell behind on her mortgage payment several years ago due to a period of unemployment. However, the picture brightened for Winnie in 2011 when she got a new job and got married. With her new job and her husband's income factored into the picture, she was able to modify her mortgage with Wells Fargo. All was well and good. Winnie began making regular mortgage payments to Wells Fargo, and then suddenly and unexpectedly in July of 2012, the bank refused her payment. In fact, the bank returned the payment and filed a foreclosure action. You can imagine how distressing this was for Winnie and her family. The case was scheduled for mediation, and this is when Mrs. Johnson called Legal Aid, and I stepped in as a volunteer attorney. In the course of preparing the case, I discovered what had triggered the red flag for Wells Fargo. There was another lien on Mrs. Johnson's property, but it was against another Winnie Johnson. That clerical error in a gigantic mortgage banking bureaucracy like Wells Fargo was what had put our Winnie Johnson's home at risk. We were able to clear up the confusion and get our loan finally approved. This was not a particularly complex or unusual matter, but it made a huge difference in one family's life. For me to use my training and experience as an attorney for someone who could not have solved their problem without legal help, but who could not afford to retain a lawyer, was very satisfying. It's why volunteering at Legal Aid is such an important part of my career and my duty as an attorney.
Thank you, Ellen. As we have said more than once, but it deserves repeating, we so appreciate our volunteer attorneys. We are proud to have them stand with us. They extend our reach and strengthen our quest for justice in so many ways every day. Ellen is one of hundreds of volunteer attorneys who extend legal aid's reach. Many of you here are those volunteers. If you are one of legal aid's many volunteer attorneys, will you please stand? Please join me in a round of applause. Oh, come on, stand up, folks. Please join me in a round of applause. Our final goal, to ensure the justice system and government entities are accountable and accessible, highlights legal aid's role as both a watchdog of the court system and the government agencies with which our clients interact, and an advocate for changes in those systems so that they operate more fairly. For example, as a watchdog, we identified that some of our school systems were communicating with parents in English only, even when they knew that the parents spoke another language. We all know that school success is linked to parent engagement, but how can parents engage if they don't understand the communications? As advocates, we intervened and have been able to change school policy so that all parents receive communications in a language they understand. As a watchdog, we have identified specific vulnerable populations who are less likely to come to legal aid, but whose needs are great. We have established special partnerships to reach out to veterans and to youth in foster care. We are working with other organizations to address the needs of people with disability, persons who were formerly incarcerated, those with limited English proficiency, and the African American community who continue to fall far behind in measures like jobs, income, education, and health. As advocates, we enable our clients to experience the promise of the Constitution of fairness by bringing brief advice clinics to their neighborhoods, by developing partnerships so that we serve our clients as whole people and whole families, not as problems to be solved, and by advocating for our clients in a wide range of courts and agencies. As you've heard today, because we have such amazingly skillful attorneys and other staff members and dedicated volunteers, our advocacy is usually successful, but not always. Ours is complex and difficult work, and frankly, we don't always win. And in some ways, it's those cases that can continue to light the fire. Let me close by giving you an example straight from this year's headlines. My colleague, Julie Roby, argued before the Ohio Supreme Court about a year ago in a case called Cashland versus Scott. In this case, we challenged our state's payday lending industry. I must tell you that I am extremely proud of the incredible work that Julie and her team did. In Cashland, we set out to enforce the law passed by our legislature and affirmed by the people of Ohio, which purported to rein in the unconscionable practices of the payday lending industry who prey, there is no other word, they prey on the poor. We joined every other legal aid in Ohio and a number of other partners in our argument to the Ohio Supreme Court that the exorbitant interest rates, fees, and conditions were no longer permissible under Ohio law. And we lost, 7-0. We did such high-quality work, and we were on the right side. I am so proud that we did this case, and I would do it again tomorrow. That we were unsuccessful in Cashland underscores that while we make an incredible difference in our clients' lives every day, there is so much more to do. Our work goes on, fighting for the justice and fairness that our clients deserve. And do not doubt that we are up to the challenge. In spite of the outcome, the Cashland case illustrates the skill, experience, and determination of our staff. Will my colleagues, the legal aid staff members, please stand so your supporters can show you their appreciation. Please stand. The fight goes on. So many clients to serve, so many wrongs to right. We are a team, and each of you is an essential member of the legal aid team, built one person at a time. As you saw in the video, just one. Thank you. And now, speaking of fighting for justice, it is my great honor to introduce our U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Ohio, Stephen M. Dettelbach, who will introduce Secretary Perez. Under Steve's leadership, his office has worked to level the playing field. They have prosecuted predatory lenders and pursued civil rights cases. Steve has focused on bringing justice to Northern Ohio by developing partnerships and engaging with the community. Steve is also the U.S. Attorney's representative on the Right to Counsel Working Group, which is part of the Justice Department's very important Access to Justice initiative. Steve is a public servant in the truest and proudest sense of that title. At Legal Aid, we are honored to call Steve our partner and our friend. Steve?
Good afternoon. Come on, there's 650 of your 800. Good afternoon. All right. Well, thank you very much, Colleen, for that incredibly generous introduction, and thank you, moreover, for all the work that you do for those whose voices are all too often not heard. And thank you also, Rick Petrulius, and the entire board of the Legal Aid Society of Greater Cleveland for the work you do. And I want to echo what Colleen said. Thank you so much to the staff members who work tirelessly for justice. So now it's my job to introduce the keynote speaker. What a match. Let me tell you something. If Secretary of Labor Tom Perez and the Legal Aid Society of Greater Cleveland were both available, I'd be fixing you guys up. Unfortunately, Secretary Perez is not single. As he often very correctly observes, I know this from firsthand knowledge, that he married way, way up. By the way, to an incredible attorney named Anne-Marie Stoudemire, who is a career-long, lifelong legal aid attorney, both in Maryland and at the Washington Legal Clinic for the Homeless. See, for Tom Perez, helping to secure access to justice isn't just something that happens and is discussed in courtrooms. It's discussed in other rooms, like the kitchen and the bathroom and the den, whenever he happens to go home from work. But given Secretary Perez's accomplishments, I'm not sure how much time he actually does spend away from work. And helping the most vulnerable in our society has been the single issue to which Tom Perez has devoted his entire career. And I'll tell you, I know that firsthand. Tom was my very first supervisor when I was a new lawyer 25 years ago. It's hard to believe that. We both look so young. At the Civil Rights Division at the Department of Justice, where Tom went after graduating from Brown University and Harvard Law School. Tom, I will tell you, is one of the most talented trial attorneys that I have ever known. And I know we have a lot of trial attorneys in the room and a lot of former trial attorneys, and that really does mean something. At the Civil Rights Division, he personally prosecuted a series of nationally significant cases, civil rights cases ranging from a hate crime shooting, a horrible case in Texas, to major police abuse cases from California all the way to here in Ohio, in southern Ohio, actually. And after prosecuting hate crimes, Tom, who had also graduated from the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard, went to work for the late Senator Edward Kennedy as his chief counsel. Among other accomplishments there, Tom was the key staff person involved in the initial drafting and efforts at what became a landmark piece of legislation, the Shepard-Byrd Hate Crimes Act. In fact, I will tell you that last week I had the privilege of being at the White House and seeing Tom Perez, along with the Shepard and Byrd families, commemorate the 5-year anniversary of that law. Now, I am not, by a long shot, Tom Perez's only Cleveland connection either. After Tom left the Senate, he was tapped by our own HHS Secretary, Donna Shalala, a Clevelander, to run her Office of Civil Rights, where he worked tirelessly to open more routes of access to equal health care for all people who live in this nation, regardless of their race, national origin. So Tom has thought and worked nationally, he has thought and worked globally, but he's acted locally as well. This tells you a little bit about who Tom Perez is as a person. At one point, as happens for people at his level, between fancy, big-time DC jobs, Tom found himself in a little bit of a break. Tom doesn't take breaks like the rest of us do. During that period, simultaneously, he was elected as president of one of the largest county councils in the state of Maryland. He also ran the University of Maryland Law School clinical programs and led a board of directors of an immigrants' rights group, which is one of the most active and busy in the state of Maryland. Do you ever take a break, Tom? Ever? I guess not, because right after that he was appointed Secretary of Labor of the state of Maryland by Governor Martin O'Malley. Then, in 2009, President Obama selected Tom to lead the Civil Rights Division at the Department of Justice. And I'll tell you, when you look at Tom's career in the last 7 years, this is a person who's selected not for the easiest jobs. I mean, it'd be great. I think it would be wonderful to be the ambassador to some island nation. My guess is it pays pretty good and is pretty interesting and enjoyable. Those aren't the jobs that Tom gets. Tom was asked to lead the Civil Rights Division after a period, quite frankly, where the division had been decimated. He was asked to reinvigorate it. And yesterday, sadly, we lost John Doerr, one of the great civil rights advocates in our nation's history, and a leader of that division. So saying this on a day like today might not be politic, but it is true. Tom Perez was the greatest leader of the Civil Rights Division in that division's history, period. He had every day and every night just one purpose there: to work to preserve the rights of those in our nation who are vulnerable. His list of accomplishments there is impossible to go through, from fighting to protect voting rights, to bringing cases that obtain landmark settlements from financial institutions that had targeted minority borrowers for subprime mortgages, and, because this is, of course, the day after Veterans Day, not just thanking the men and women who sacrifice and serve our nation, but making sure that they had homes to return to when they came back from abroad by bringing the largest USERRA case ever against a financial institution that had raised their mortgages while they were fighting to protect us. And then, of course, last but not least, he came here to Cleveland and stood by my side when we announced a full pattern and practice investigation of the Cleveland Division of Police for their uses of force. And he committed to this community then, and I repeat it now, that when the findings in that matter occur, that they will be full, they will be fair, and they will be public. And then, with job creation as the major issue facing our economy, President Obama tapped Tom Perez again, this time to be the Secretary of Labor in 2013. And to no one's surprise, the results are simply undeniable. October was the 9th month in a row with greater than 200,000 new jobs. Let me say that again. October was the 9th month in a row with greater than 200,000 new jobs. And the unemployment rate is now at 5.8% compared to 7.2% just a year ago when Tom took over. But Secretary Perez has not just focused on making sure that there were more jobs, he's also worked to make sure that there are better jobs. Tom has focused his energy on pushing for an increase in the minimum wage. And even though it escaped a lot of attention on election night, it's worth noting that last week, 5 out of 5 states all over the country that had issues relating to the minimum wage on the ballot voted to increase the minimum wage. That is leadership. And so, to end where I began, sorry, Legal Aid Society, he's taken. Just like you in the Legal Aid Society, he works for all of us. My friend, the nation's 26th Secretary of Labor, Thomas E. Perez.
Hey, good afternoon. Good afternoon. It's an honor to be here. It's an honor to be back in Cleveland. Steve, thank you for your kind words. Being a lawyer by training, I do need to correct the record on 2 accounts. Well, I'll just, in the interest of time, I'll limit it to 2. The first thing is you indicated that I married up, and for the purposes of the record, it should reflect that we both married up. And secondly, and the most obvious, we both don't look younger, Steve. Okay? Yeah, it's just one of us. We'll keep it ambiguous for now. I've said this before, and I had the privilege of speaking at Steve's swearing in, and I'll say it again. You are incredibly lucky here in the Northern District of Ohio to have Steve Dettelbach, because he is not simply a leader in law enforcement here in the Northern District of Ohio, but he's a leader across the nation. He's someone that I know the Attorney General has relied on from the outset of his tenure because, as we say in the business, Steve's got game. He's got values, he's got talent, and he has a wonderful staff. And so, Steve, thank you for your kind introduction. And Colleen and Rick and the board members and staff of Legal Aid, thank you for everything that you do. Colleen lacks passion. You could tell that from her presentation. So after today, we're going to work on that, because it's clear to me that while she's a talented lawyer, she doesn't appear to really care about her clients. So, we'll work on that, Colleen, okay? I love passion, and I've lost plenty of 7-0 votes. I remember when that alternate juror called me after the acquittal and said, I would have voted for conviction. So that's how we define victory sometimes in civil rights work. So I hear you, okay? And congrats to all the awardees. You do remarkable work. And when I was reflecting on what to say today, I had 3 immediate reactions about the notion of the work of the Legal Aid Society and legal services work generally. The first, as Steve pointed out, was my wife. 30 years ago in Buffalo, New York, we met in the summer. She was about to start law school. I was in between my first and second of 4 years. I was in a remedial program. She went through it in 3 years. And she was working at Neighborhood Legal Services in Buffalo, New York. And I was working at a law firm between my first and second year of grad school. And we met, we fell in love, and part of the reason we fell in love is I love what she stood for. She always wanted to be a legal aid lawyer. She was a paralegal at the time, and then went to law school. And I tell this to my students all the time, life is the search for what gets you out of bed in the morning, what makes you tick. And what made her tick throughout her life is she wanted to serve the underserved. And so she went from law school to the Legal Aid Bureau in Maryland, where she ended up being the managing attorney. She realized that she really didn't like managing people as much as working with clients. And she didn't really like the restrictions on LSC funding. And so after our oldest was born 18 years ago, she went to the Washington Legal Clinic for the Homeless, where she has done remarkable work ever since. So when I think about legal aid work, This is the family business in a very real respect. And the second reason, the second thing I thought about when I was thinking about this was my own experiences, because my first meaningful internship in college in Rhode Island was at Rhode Island Legal Services. And this was in the immediate aftermath of some pretty significant cuts in the early 80s to legal services funding. And I remember vividly going to that internship and being so remarkably impressed by the dedication and the stick-to-itiveness of the staff, the attorneys, the paraprofessionals, all of the other workers in that office. And they taught me about what it meant to represent clients and what it meant to stand up for justice and what it meant to sail into strong headwinds, but always keep your head up. What it meant by what John Lewis, I'm sure, told you a few years ago, we fall down and we get up. And that's what legal aid work is all about. I saw it firsthand. My work study job my senior year was at the Rhode Island Commission for Human Rights, which had suffered enormous budget cuts during that period as well. And I worked 20 to 25 hours a week there. And I'll never forget one of my first cases trying to mediate an age discrimination case involving a 52-year-old man who had been fired from his job unceremoniously. And what I learned from that, and here I was, I had hair back then, I had no replacement parts, and I had no experience. And here I was thrust into this situation. And what I learned during that period was what the dignity of work really means. Because this client didn't simply lose his job, he lost his dignity, and he had no reason why, or no understanding of what happened. And the work that we were able to do there to mediate a settlement helped restore that dignity to his life. And again, affirmed to me what my mother, who, were she alive today, would be celebrating her 86th birthday, but what she's taught my 4 siblings and me, which is that, if you want to get to heaven, you better have letters of reference from poor people. And I got to tell you, your folder at the Legal Aid Bureau is very, very full. And my wife's business model at the Washington Legal Clinic for the Homeless is all about leveraging the private bar. So I not only want to congratulate and say thank you to all of the dedicated staff at the Legal Aid Bureau. I know firsthand that you don't get paid a lot, but I also know firsthand that the non-monetary rewards are priceless and continue to be priceless. And I am equally aware of the fact that without the private bar, access to justice would be elusive for so many more people. And so to all of you, whether you are with a corporation, whether you are with a law firm, whatever way in which you are contributing, maybe you are another nonprofit partner that is a remarkable part of the quilt of opportunity, I say thank you to all of you. The third thing I thought about when I was free associating after reflection on what to do with this speech is I thought about all the heavyweights and what legal aid lawyers have meant to access to justice in this nation, because my wife and I have had the privilege of being mentored by a number of heavyweights in the legal aid world. I was mentioning to someone I had just met before about a colleague of mine, Clinton Bamberger, who is a heavyweight in the legal aid movement. A woman named Florence Roisman, some of you may know. Florence has mentored so many legal aid lawyers. And you look at the warranty of habitability. Well, that was a case brought by Florence, and this fledgling lawyer who did okay in life, her name is Patricia Wald, D.C. Circuit, international acclaim, national acclaim. These were legal aid lawyers who established the warranty of habitability through litigation. They made change. I think about here in Ohio, Moore versus Cleveland. And that was a case that had very serious significance for a lot of the work that we were doing in Maryland, because Cleveland Legal Aid, as you know, went to the Supreme Court and struck down a law prohibiting anyone but a nuclear family from living together in single-family housing. And as we dealt with housing crises across this country, that was a linchpin in the arsenal of legal aid lawyers and others seeking access to justice. I think about the work I've done in the disability space, the seminal Supreme Court case of Olmstead versus LC, which stands for the proposition that the unnecessary institutionalization of people with disabilities is a form of discrimination under the ADA. And we've done a lot of work to open up opportunities for people with disabilities to live and work in the most integrated setting appropriate to their needs. Who brought that case initially? It was the Legal Aid Bureau of Georgia, and we continue to work with them. So I think long and hard about the remarkable work that you've done. But as I was listening to you, Colleen, I couldn't help but think about the individual cases that are the cases that you always remember. My 12-year-old son, who's our caboose, he's the youngest of three, he always goes with my wife to visit Mr. Haiguni, who's one of her clients, who's 85 years old. Mr. Haiguni has a hoarding disorder, and my wife first met him when he was living in his storage locker. And she has helped him over the years to restore dignity to his life. I couldn't help, as I was looking at your son, un placer estar aquí con usted, es un honor. And I couldn't help, as I was looking at him, not to think about a boy named DeMonte Driver. He's a 12-year-old boy. When I was the clinic director in Maryland, DeMonte is not with us today because he passed away at the age of 12. He died of complications from a toothache. Let me repeat that. He died of complications from a toothache. Now, if his mother had had access to Medicaid, he would have lived. If his mother had had access to Medicaid, which had a network of dentists that might be available to treat him, he might have lived. If we had had health reform back then, he might have survived. And as a result, and this is the business case for legal services, by the way, $250,000 were spent on his end-of-life care as a result of the failure to implement the $80 tooth extraction, which would have saved his life. So we talk about the remarkably important impact work that you do, and at the same time, these individual cases are so critically important. And as I was chatting with Colleen before today, I couldn't help but be struck by the notion that, how many people are you turning away? Roughly 50% of our folks who need our help, we are turning away right now. And that is a reminder of the fact that notwithstanding the progress you continue to make, and that you in that sentence is every single stakeholder in this room, notwithstanding that progress, we have a lot of work to do. And I have 4 observations that I'd like to make about that unfinished business. Observation number 1, we need a robust legal services network during good economic times. Now, my wife was working, and she's been working. By the way, thank you for clapping. That's because he's been here since the 60s. He remembers OEO. He remembers the early 70s. And by the way, we're going to get to the audience participation part of my speech in about 5 minutes. I kid you not. I have a multiple choice question for all of you, and I predict very few of you will get the answer right. But I'll get to that in a minute. There's this school of thought that simply says, all we have to do is grow the economy and everything will be fine. Well, I remember the 90s. The 90s, we had surpluses as long as the eye could see. We had 4% unemployment rate. We had remarkably shared prosperity. The rising tide in the 90s lifted more boats. I'll get back to that in a minute. But at the same time, my wife's business was going gangbusters, because we still had issues involving access to justice. We still had that unmet need. You look at the budget for the Legal Services Corporation over time. I mean, if we spent half the money that was spent on political campaign ads this year and give it to the Legal Services Corporation, that would be about a 150% increase in their annual budget. And so because you see it every day. So in good economic times, we need a legal services operation. And in tougher economic times, that's my second point, we need them even more. I was talking to my wife in preparation for this, because I would be committing malpractice were I not to, about her client mix. And what's interesting to look at in her client mix now is that there's this conventional wisdom that suggests that most of the clients at the Legal Clinic for the Homeless and similar places are dealing with substance abuse or mental health needs. Well, actually, in her world, that is statistically not the case in terms of what the growth areas are. The growth areas for her are people who hit on hard times during the Great Recession and had jobs, were doing well, and now find themselves in homelessness. One of the biggest challenges in the District of Columbia is how to address the issues of homeless families, because there simply aren't enough shelter beds that are safe and give dignity to these remarkable families who, but for the grace of God, could go any of us in this room. And so, during these tough economic times, it is even more imperative that we have a robust legal services budget and a robust legal services operation. And look at some of the data. In 1993, the budget for legal services was $357 million. In 2013, the budget was $340 million. So I guess what that means is that your needs went down over the last 20 years because you didn't need the money. Well, I don't think that's the case. And that is why it is so critically important now, as we're climbing out of the Great Recession, that we continue to redouble our efforts in this area, because all of the needs, and Colleen talked about really what I often call the building blocks of self-sufficiency. That's what you do. You make sure that there is housing security, employment security, income security, retirement security, physical security. Everything that you are doing is all about those building blocks of self-sufficiency, which in turn relate to the building blocks of upward mobility. And we need your work more than ever. We need partnership more than ever. And here is my third point, and this is a troubling point. The bipartisan consensus that once existed about the need and efficacy for a robust legal services network is beginning to fray. And this gets to my audience participation side. I told you I was going to do this. I am going to read a quote, and I am going to give you 4 choices about who said this and when. And here it is. I firmly believe that we must provide a mechanism to overcome economic barriers to adequate legal assistance more than anything else. We have learned that legal assistance for the poor, when properly provided, is one of the most constructive ways to help them to help themselves. Furthermore, America's system of law now requires equal treatment for all in our courts of criminal justice. It is no less important that equal access be afforded those who seek redress through our civil laws. Now, who said that? Was it Lyndon Johnson? Was it Ted Cruz? Was it Ted Kennedy? Or was it Richard Nixon? Now, if you answered Ted Cruz, you would be wrong. But if you answered Richard Nixon, you would be correct. Because it was Richard Nixon who, in May of I had to put Ted Kennedy in there. He was my boss. He probably said something like that at some point, but not this particular quote. And this is what Richard Nixon said in 1973 when he was making the case for the Legal Services Corporation. And that bill would eventually pass roughly 2 weeks before he resigned his presidency. And Steve mentioned one of my heroes who passed away yesterday, John Doerr. John Doerr is and always will be the gold standard for all assistant attorneys general of civil rights in the Department of Justice. John Doerr was an unmitigated American hero, and he was so noted about 1.5 years ago by the president, and I'm so happy that he was alive and healthy enough to come to D.C. for that Medal of Honor ceremony. John Doerr was also a Republican, often overlooked. I see people like Bob Dole fighting for the Disability Rights Treaty, a Republican. Things got done. You know, people refer to my boss, Ted Kennedy, as this fierce partisan. Well, he was partisan. He was progressive. He was principled, and he was pragmatic. And his best friend, or one of his best friends in the Senate, was Orrin Hatch. They got things done. Children's health insurance among them, hate crimes legislation among them. They got things done. But we are seeing a fraying of this consensus around these issues. And that is something we have to work on, everyone in this room. Because, again, as when I was talking about DeMonte Driver, aside from the sheer and utter immorality of the loss of life of a 12-year-old boy, which was completely preventable, $250,000 was spent. There's a very compelling business case to be made about the work that you do and how, as a result of lifting people out of poverty, as a result of taking someone out of a situation of domestic violence or helping a young boy navigate the educational system so that he or she can realize their highest and best dreams. When you do that, you dramatically increase the odds that zip code will no longer be a determinant of their fate, or what school they went to will no longer be a determinant of their fate. That is why this is so important. We must rekindle that bipartisan spirit that once existed and that I am hopeful still exists, because it is critically important. We can't continue to have Colleen turning away 50% of her clients, not because they don't need our help, but because you simply don't have enough of a network to help them. And that brings me to my last point. We need more than ever to build synergies and redundancies and partnerships. We need an even more robust public and private sector. We need also to make sure that we use our state court systems to create and establish a civil right to counsel in cases involving basic human needs. In Maryland, we call that civil Gideon. Some people don't like that term, but that's what it's about. If you're about to lose custody or potentially lose custody of your child, the notion that you could not potentially have a lawyer in that proceeding is ludicrous. If you are about to become, if you have become a victim of domestic violence and you're in a court proceeding, of course you should have the right to counsel. And so, in short, I leave you with the following points or observations. We need to think big and we need to think bold. We need to continue our efforts in the spirit of John Doerr, in the spirit of Richard Nixon, in the spirit of Ted Kennedy, in the spirit of so many others who worked together to build consensus around the importance of helping people, of making sure that access to justice and equal justice under law are not simply hollow words, but they have real meaning. And by everyone, I mean everyone needs to be in. And I'll tell you one thing, the Obama administration, we are all in on this effort. The Obama administration has made strong commitments across a variety of departments to support your work, to bold steps to ensure that basic legal services are available to more people. And it starts with fighting for your budget. In 2008, the budget for Legal Services Corporation was $350 million. In 2010, as a result of the leadership of this president, it moved up to $420 million. Today, well, I'm not going to get to that word because it isn't that high. And that's where we need your help. Budgets are moral documents. When someone says that something's a priority to me, when I was on local county council, I always said, oh, it's a priority, show me the money. Show me where it's reflected in your budget that it's a priority. And so when you advocate, I hope you will tell people that budgets are moral documents and make sure that, and you tell a compelling case of remarkable need. You can make a compelling business case as well. And I want to make sure you know that you have a strong ally in the president. You also have a strong ally in our Attorney General, Eric Holder, because through his Access to Justice initiative, which was launched in 2010, we're working more closely than ever with state and local and tribal officials, as well as a network of nonprofit and private sector partners to extend quality representation. We've established the Legal Aid Interagency Roundtable, a group of 18 federal agencies dedicated to examining current programs and practices in order to create better outcomes. We've been performing important work, and I know some of you have already accessed the Access to Justice Toolkit, which is a dynamic resource available on the DOJ website. And it will continue to promote the strong interagency cooperation that makes a real difference in the lives of folks. We are all in at the Department of Labor as well. My life, I have led a charmed life because I've been able to do civil rights work and I've been able to do labor rights work. And if you remember the 50th, we just celebrated the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington. That march was a march for civil rights, and that march was a march for labor rights. I am a man, I am a woman. Those were actually they didn't say I am a woman, I'm ad-libbing on that, but I think they'll allow me to do that. I looked for all the signs, I only saw I am a man. But I'm going to say I am a woman because I know they were thinking that, so you'll allow me that. I just don't want the fact checkers in the corner getting on my case when I'm done. It was about dignity. It was about discrimination and the need to build a better and more inclusive America. And I feel so lucky at the Department of Labor because we are in it in so many ways. Our wage and hour division, we've recovered over $1 billion in back wages in the Obama administration, and the vast majority of these cases are on behalf of low-wage workers. Many cases involve workers who are undocumented. And I met with 5 ambassadors last week to repeat the notion that even if you are undocumented, you nonetheless have many rights in this country, including the right to be compensated when you have worked. And that is very important. The Department of Labor, we also have a very robust skills agenda. And just this morning, I was over at Lorain Community College talking with business leaders and educators and workers. And this is what I hear and everywhere I go. And I told you I was going to get back to this. You know, here's what's going on in this country. And it's remarkable. We've had 56 consecutive months of private sector job growth. And let me give you a little context. The 3 months before President Obama took office, we lost 2 million jobs, 2 million. And you look now at this 4.5-year run, 56 consecutive months to the tune of 10.6 million jobs. That is more jobs created than all the European countries, Japan, and every other advanced nation in the world combined. Combined. And here's what's going on that's below the radar screen. There's this revolution going on in how we educate young adults. When I was at Lorain Community College, one of our panelists was a recent graduate who, along with her husband, lost their job during the Great Recession. There is a renaissance in advanced manufacturing, and one of the epicenters of that renaissance in America is right here in Ohio. And we see it day in and day out. And this person is a perfect example. When they lost their jobs, they ended up being on public assistance for a while. They may have been a client. I don't know. But what I do know is that as a result of our investments, I refer to DOL as Match.com, okay? We match job seekers who want to punch their ticket to the middle class with businesses who want to grow. And everywhere I go across America, I see businesses who want to grow because they're bullish about America. Our energy advantage, that's going to be with us for decades. Intellectual property advantage. They don't want to do business in China as much anymore because their intellectual property gets stolen with regularity. They want to do business here because we've got a great workforce. And that's what we do. We help people upskill. And this person was so excited about the job she has in advanced manufacturing. She is no longer a client. And that's what we want. We want people to be able to punch their ticket to the middle class. And our skills agenda does just that. And we're transforming, along with our partners in the business community, community colleges, other nonprofit and union stakeholders, we're transforming how we deliver skills. We're working in partnership more than ever with the Department of Education and the Department of Health and Human Services to provide career pathways. All too many people who are on TANF were cycling from one low-wage job to the other. Now what we're doing is connecting them with jobs that exist and pay a decent wage. The old model of training was what I used to call train and pray. You know, we train people to be widget makers and we pray that someone's looking to hire widget makers. Now everything we do is demand driven. We understand with precision what the demand needs are. And I'm here to tell you, today, right now, there are 4 million job vacancies in the United States, right now. And one of the biggest challenges that employers have is getting that skilled workforce. And that is another opportunity. That's why we're working together with you. The other opportunity that we have, and we, along with the Department of Justice, are the 2 biggest funders to assist people who are leaving prison to re-enter communities. And I firmly believe that one of the best ways to lower recidivism is to give someone access to a good job with a career path. And that's exactly what we're doing. I've traveled with the Attorney General to a number of programs that have shown great success in doing this. And so the Department of Labor, again, stepping up there. We're stepping up to make sure that people get rewarded for a fair day's work with a fair day's pay. You know, the minimum wage is worth 20% less than it was 30 years ago. And nobody who works a full-time job in this country should have to live in poverty. That's what's happening all too frequently. And you know who tells me to raise the minimum wage as much as anyone? It's businesses. Because I say, what can I do for you? What do you need? And they tell me time and time again, Tom, you know what I need? I need customers. Well, you know, it's hard to have customers if people don't have money in their pockets. Econ 101, 70% of GDP growth is consumption. Econ 101.1, you get consumption by putting money in people's pockets. You get money in people's pockets by giving folk a raise. And when people haven't had a raise, they don't spend anything. And that's why, since the end of this recession, inflation-adjusted spending by the top 5% has increased over 16%, and by the remainder has increased 1%. And that's bad for business. That's bad for workers. That's all too frequently good for business. But you don't want that business because we want people to have a job. And so we're continuing at the Department of Labor through all of these efforts to help build this self-sufficiency quilt that enables people to punch their ticket to the middle class. And we're not the only department involved in this effort at a federal level. The Department of Health and Human Services, I'm so proud of the work we're doing in the Affordable Care Act context. And I'll be out later today meeting with a couple that I met a year ago when we were doing ACA outreach. As a result of falling on hard times, they lost their health insurance. And in order to pay the medical bills, she had to sell her wedding ring. Her wedding ring. That shouldn't happen in America. And as a result, and I want to, if Dr. Boutros is here from, I was over at his hospital. I don't know if he's here today, but he has been a remarkable leader in ensuring that 150,000 plus Ohioans now have health insurance that they didn't have a year ago. I appreciate that. And by the way, that helps you, as you well know. And we continue to work with HUD. We continue to work with other federal agencies. And we need to continue to work with our state and local partners. Back in Maryland, our state's highest court was very involved during the foreclosure crisis. I was working in state government, and we worked very closely with them to make sure that people had access to justice. We changed a number of critical rules, and I hope your state justice system will similarly step forward because they can be a critical partner in these efforts. I hope that you'll continue to avail yourselves of the law enforcement entities in state government because, you know, we can't do everything at the Department of Labor. Our resources are limited, and you need to continue to hold us accountable and hold everyone else accountable to do our jobs. We need public attorney generals like us, and we need private attorneys general like you to continue to do your work. And so, as I conclude, I have one final reflection, and that is I come here today with an unrelenting sense of optimism about the future of this country. And I know sometimes that's hard to imagine when you sit there in the day-to-day of what you do and you confront people and help people and sometimes try to help people unsuccessfully who haven't been able to get the basic services they need. But as I look around this country, everywhere I go, I speak to employers who are bullish. Everywhere I go, I met a woman named Catherine Hackett a year ago. She was a single mom who'd lost her job. She has 2 kids. They're both in the military. And by the way, thank you to the Legal Aid Society here for all the work you do on behalf of veterans, the number of people you represent. 1,300 veterans in the last year. That is real help. Thank you so much. But Catherine, 2 kids who were in the military, one special forces in Afghanistan. After she lost her job, she had to turn her heat down to 55 because that was the only way. She couldn't afford the bills. I meet so many people making choices between paying a gallon of gas and a gallon of milk. And now I met with Catherine a few weeks ago, and she's got a job. And she's punching her ticket again to the middle class. And I see that. And so that gives me optimism. I see so many people like y'all in this audience, people who understand what my mother taught me. If you do want to get to heaven, you better have those letters of reference. And you're putting those letters in your pocket by helping folks. There's so much more that needs to be done. And I am confident that we can continue to do this work. Because you know what? I am convinced that Dr. King was right when he said the arc of the moral universe bends toward justice. I am convinced that the arc of the moral universe also bends toward those who seek to expand opportunity, like Dr. Boutros is doing with those seeking access to basic health care, because he understands that that makes sense. He understands that rather than treating the symptom of that boy with asthma who's been to the ER 15 times, why don't we get access to health insurance? And then why don't we partner with our legal aid partners to make sure that his housing isn't substandard? In short, why don't we solve his problems smarter and more sustainably? And people like that inspire me, and I see them all over this country. And that is why I am optimistic. I know we can move forward. I know we have a lot of work to do. But as a guy I saw last night, not personally, but from about 80 yards away, his name is Bruce Springsteen, and I was at the concert for Valor last night. It was a great night. A band from Akron played, just so you know. And I remember something that Bruce Springsteen said, and it's always stuck with me because it's really a first cousin of what my mother said and what my family taught me, which is nobody wins unless everybody wins. It's really that simple. And, we don't live in a society where if you burn out your neighbor's candle, it'll make your candle shine brighter. That's not who we are. It's not who we've ever been. And yet, we need to make sure we reiterate these values, because as you continue to do your work, everybody will win. We all succeed when we all succeed, but we all succeed only when we all succeed. We're in for the long haul. I know you're in for the long haul. We need to enlarge this circle of folks who are in for the long haul, and we need to make the business case, the moral case, the security case, every case possible for why the work you do is so critically important to our nation. Thank you so much for having me.
Wow. Well, I hope we're all inspired by the Secretary's remarks. I want to say again, thank you so much for spending part of your day with us. We do have a small token of appreciation for the Secretary, so he can take part of legal aid home. It's actually, you just saw it on the screen. Remembrance of this day, I hope he'll remember it. I know we will. Thank you very much.